Hey all, welcome to ShareTreck. Today is the 25th of March 2022, and this is our daily update video. I have a few news articles, and that's what I'm going to start with. And after that, we'll have a technical analysis of Nasdaq and VIX, and we'll also talk a little bit about the signals that is given by gold and Bitcoin. And then we'll take a look at the genomic shares and do some technical analysis on our watch list. So that's what we have in store for today. So let's get started. The first news article that I have comes from the New Scientist website, and it talks about rice and maize yields being boosted to 10% by CRISPR gene editing. This is an effort taken by the Chinese Agricultural University in Beijing, and they have identified that there are certain genes that could be turned off in maize, and that can increase the yield by 10%. And having found that out, they are now looking at other crops to see if a similar thing can be achieved there also, which would mean that global food production can go up by 10%, and that will be a much more cooling effect when feeding the growing population. So that's the good news out here with the first news article. The second news article I have comes from a website called Genetic Literacy Project, and they are lamenting that South Africa is bungling regulation on CRISPR and other gene-edited crops and why the consumers will pay the price. However, I do not agree with the point of view of this particular article. So according to the article, South Africa's authorities have taken what we think as an unfortunate approach to regulating genome-edited plants. In October 2021, the government classified genome-edited plants as genetically modified crops. That is based on the interpretation of the definition of a genetically modified organism in a 25-year-old piece of legislation, rather than on recent science-based risk analysis consideration. So basically what has happened is South Africa has taken a much more conservative approach towards classifying genetically modified crop, and whatever modifications are being done using CRISPR to enhance productivity and other things are falling within the ambit of those definitions. And as experts in plant biology, the article continues to say, we fear that this regulatory approach will greatly inhibit the development of improved crops for South African farmers. It will place an unnecessary regulatory burden on bio-innovators. This will discourage local investment for in-house research and development, yada, yada, yada. It goes on. So basically, when it comes to CRISPR, I firmly believe that regulations have to be absolutely airtight, and we cannot allow the way things have been going on in the past, where products are released into the market and then there is a recall. We can't afford to do that with CRISPR-edited crops, because once they are in the ecosystem, you can't take them out ever. It can't be recalled. It will mutate and come in some form or the other. So we may not have immediate gratification right away with CRISPR, but it will take some period of time. And when that happens, it will be done properly, and it would have less of safety risk for humans overall and for the rest of the ecosystem by extension. So I think that this article probably is taking a wrong approach. I would any day prefer CRISPR to be well regulated, so that whatever gains we have is coming without baggage. There are no class action lawsuits. There is no need to do an inefficient recall, which will never be possible to complete, and pay the consequences. So I think in this particular case, I'm going to disagree with this article. So apart from those news articles which are specifically related to our genomic stocks, I have a few other things that I want to quickly discuss, and I'm going to keep this short in the interest of keeping our overall video much shorter. The first thing is that Russia-Ukraine conflict is still continuing. Russia, despite the image of being a global superpower, has not been able to do anything conclusive in Ukraine, and Ukrainian army has still been able to hold them off. And this is causing increasing frustration overall, because there's a lot of sanctions being put on oligarchs, and their yachts and everything is being seized. So those oligarchs are not going to be very happy losing all their wealth, which they are planning to pass on to their children and give them a position of power in the world. So that pressure is always there on the oligarchs, who may turn on Putin. The other thing that is happening is that even Putin's own yacht, I believe, has been identified. They are still not sure whether it is his because the title has not been easy to confirm. So it looks like it belongs to nobody at this point of time, but they suspect it is Putin's yacht. So Putin's own assets might be coming under the sanctions radar and ripe for confiscation. So that is happening. The other thing that's happening is that the Ukrainians are more and more sending messages to the Russians in their own native language, Russian, and informing them what is happening. And the increasing death toll of Russian soldiers, as per media reports, is becoming very difficult to conceal back in Russia. And a lot of local Russians are now protesting against the war. So the situation is becoming a bit difficult for Putin. And that all the more brings me to the point that when such leaders are cornered, they take drastic measures. And in this case, the drastic measure would be tactical nuclear weapons and stuff like that, which I'm afraid to even contemplate. So at this point of time, I think we have to keep that risk at the back of our mind that at any point of time there could be a threat or the use of some weapons of mass destructions to even the battlefield and kind of shock everybody and disrupt the current status quo, which is more in favor of Ukraine and rest of the world than in favor of Russia. So we got to anticipate anything could happen during the weekend. Therefore, I'm thinking that given that we have had a whole series of positive moves in Nasdaq and a whole series of downward movement in VIX at this point of time, we potentially should expect a little bit of downturn here and there, and anything could happen during the weekend. So I personally am going to, after this recording session, I'm going to go and have a look at my shares, and I'm going to trim some of the holdings where there's profit and keep the cash handy and wait for the weekend to pass and then look at what happens next. Also, when we look at Bitcoin, it has been going up on a gallop. And gold also has been going up again. So gold particularly is going to be a hedge against inflation, in my opinion. That's been the case in the past. So the signals that are coming from gold is that there is going to be a huge spurt in gold. I have shared that chart with you many times before, and I'm anticipating gold at around 2,400 to 2,500 in the very near future. So if that's going to be the case, then we should expect that interest rates will be high in the very near future, and there will be a tightened monetary condition. So having said that, let's go and have a look at Nasdaq and VXN. It's around 9:34. The market has just started. So let's get started with the analysis. Let us start off with oil. The price of oil is going down a bit here. And since the beginning of the day, the oil price, which opened low, has gone down further. And at this point of time, having gone all the way down to 109, it has retraced back to 110. So there's a bit of movement in the oil prices, but it's very subdued and it's towards the bearish side. One of the other things that happened, I forgot to mention this when I was talking about Bitcoin in my earlier segment, is that Russia has now announced that it's going to accept gold and Bitcoin as payment for oil and gas exports. So that's another aspect which is potentially driving Bitcoin prices up, I believe. And it could also reflect in the US oil prices, because if the pressure on getting oil is getting reduced, and if Russia is selling oil at a much lower price in order to break the sanctions and accepting Bitcoins and gold as remuneration for that, then it's definitely going to lead to a bit of weakness in oil prices. Potentially, that's probably what we are seeing. And if the authorities manage to clamp down on that and prevent that from happening, then oil price is likely to go back up again. But as long as the ability for Russia to sell oil and gas with Bitcoin and gold exists, we'll see more weakness in the oil prices going forward, which will be good for the Nasdaq, and it will reduce the volatility. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, because I'm pretty sure that at this point of time, various Ministry of Finances and Treasury secretaries will all be looking at how to curb the leakage from the sanction imposed on Russia if Bitcoin and gold was being used. So having said that, I don't know how US oil is going to go, but if my theory is right, then we'll find that US oil is falling further, because some countries will prefer to buy cheaper oil from Russia by paying them Bitcoin. On the other side, we have an agreement between US and Europe for gas supply, so that they don't have to depend more on Russia going forward, and therefore become much more energy independent and free of domination by Russia. So that's another aspect that has happened, which potentially eases the pressure on gas prices, momentarily at least, because it's a good news story, and it indicates a move away from dependence on Russian oil and gas. Therefore, if Russia is still on sanctions and it can't sell oil and gas, it doesn't matter much, because Europe will procure gas from somewhere else. But in reality, when they have to put all the infrastructure in place, I suspect it will take a year or two before US can start supplying gas to Russia in a reliable manner and replace their dependence on Russian oil and gas. So having said that, let's move on to the VIX. The VIX is flat right now. This is the live VIX feed, and it's flat right now. I'm heartened by the fact that it is still within yesterday's candle. So I think that we have an opportunity to further come down. It would have been bad if we had opened above yesterday's candle. That would have been a negative scenario. So I'm okay with this at this point of time, and our nearest support is 19.93 for the VIX. And as we can see, the MACD is turning towards the signal line, and the momentum is below average and flat. So if I go to a one-day time frame, we can see that we have opened up much lower on the VIX, which is a good sign, and our MACD is absolutely bearish and it's pushing away from the signal line, and momentum is low, below average, and it's pointing down. All in all, it's a good sign that VIX is going to go down. So if we see our QQQ, I have drawn the trend lines that we had. I have replicated what we had in IXIC. So this is what it would look like. So for the longest time, we have had this support that has been going on, this green line of support. And then we fell. And when we fell, we followed the new support line, which is this diagonal green line that we have here. And then we have now started moving upward. And if you see the upward trajectory of Nasdaq, it's pretty steep. And we also see that our 9-day exponential moving average has diverged significantly away from the 20-day exponential moving average and moved upwards. And it's almost at the verge of crossing over the 50-day exponential moving average. These are all very, very healthy signs. But when things happen so rapidly, there is bound to be some profit taking and some breather. And today could potentially be the profit taking day. So I'm afraid that we might see some losses in QQQ. Again, this is my personal opinion, my interpretation of the charts, the way I have understood it. And I personally think that today might be a day of profit taking, because the weekend is going to be rife with possibilities for anything bad happening in the Russia-Ukraine front. And that's the reason why I think there could be some amount of profit taking and a fall in QQQ. If it doesn't happen, I would be very happy, but I'm thinking that that's most likely to happen today. So with that said, let's go and look at our biotech shares. So here we have our genomic shares on the right side of the screen, and it's been sorted based on the gainers being on the top and the most losers being on the bottom. So we have Novartis above at 5.59% gain. That translates to around 45 to 50 cents. And we are just about broken through 3 of the support lines since we last corrected this chart. So I'm just going to mark them as support lines, these 2. And then finally, we are right now at 87.04 resistance. The share price is 87.13. So I'll wait for the end of the day before marking this as a support. So overall, the MACD is also bullish, and the momentum is above average and pointing upwards. So I think Novartis is set to gain value today and potentially convert 87.04 into a support. So let's look at Pfizer. Pfizer is up 0.46%, and our support of 52.48 still remains. And our 9-day exponential moving average is converging along with the 52.48 support line and providing a very strong support for Pfizer today. The MACD is moving towards the signal line despite being bullish, and the momentum being above average is still falling down and pointing downwards in an attempt to go below average. So those 2 things give me a negative feeling, and I'm thinking that 52.48 will probably be the support for the day, and we will struggle to stay above that. So that's my prognosis for PFE. And Regeneron is up 0.27%. And it has opened above yesterday's close. So that's again a bullish positive sign. 9-day exponential moving average is still a support for Regeneron. And if you see the distance between the 9-day, 20-day, 50-day, and 100-day EMA is very, very pronounced. That indicates a very, very steep rise in the price in a very short term. So that's not very healthy. So we might probably expect some corrections for Regeneron before proceeding further. But I would assume that we have done our first higher low out here, so that we can start forming a trend line to support a bullish channel. But this channel is far too steep to be sustainable. So I would probably expect us to go up a little and then come down a little, so that the first leg would be a little more flatter, so that it can be a more reasonable climb in prices. So we'll wait and see what happens. But today Regeneron might probably close positive or slightly flat, given the fact that I'm worried about the weekend and what would happen there. And I'm predicting an overall sell in the Nasdaq and prices generally going down with profit booking. So that said, let us move on to Vertex. Vertex is up 0.09%. Again, it's in a very good bullish channel out here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a bullish channel, which will support the price for Vertex, and that this is what it's going to look like. So this is exactly what it's going to look like. And our upper bounds is going to be this red line out here. I hope that we continue tracking along that 9-day exponential moving average, along with 248.18, the horizontal support. Both of them together are going to be a strong support for Vertex today. I don't expect Vertex to fall below that. Our MACD is bullish, but it's tending towards a signal line. Momentum is above average, but it's flat. The fact that it's flat is what worries me, but the RSI has got plenty of opportunity to go up before it becomes overbought. So overall, I'm thinking Vertex might end the day positive today, or at least above 245 points. Above 248.81, which is the 9-day exponential moving average. Next, let's go on to IMTX, which is up 0.73%, and it's got support from the 9-day and the 20-day exponential moving average. The MACD is bullish, and we have managed to pull the signal line also above the all-time low MACD of minus 0.59. So that's a positive for IMTX, and I'm thinking that IMTX will today struggle to stay above the 20-day exponential moving average. The MACD, though bullish, is not being adequately supported by the signal line, which is below average. However, what is heartening is that it's pointing upwards. So that shows an intention for the momentum to cross over to above average. And that gives me confidence that IMTX might probably end the day positive today. Go on to Caribou Biosciences, which is down minus 1.68%. And it's fallen below the 9-day exponential moving average and the 20-day exponential moving average, both of which are going to be resistance for Caribou Biosciences. The MACD, even though it's bullish, is tending towards the signal line, with the momentum being below average and pointed downwards, showing further deceleration in momentum. So overall, it's going to be a negative day for Caribou Biosciences, probably lose another 10 to 15 cents before close. Illumina is down minus 1.66%. That translates to $5.68 negative. And we are still above our support of 330.25, as well as our 9-day and 20-day exponential moving averages. However, we have fallen below the 50-day exponential moving average, which is this green line out here. And the MACD, though bullish, is tending towards the signal line, aiming to cross over to the bearish side. The momentum, though above average, is pointed downwards and tending to go towards being below average. Both of that put together makes me feel that Illumina is probably going to lose another couple of dollars before the close of day today. Beam is down 1.18%, that's around 70 cents, and we are still within our bearish downward channel. Our MACD is bearish and tending towards the signal line. Momentum is below average and pointed downwards. So Beam is likely to probably lose $1.50 by the end of the day today. Bluebird is down minus 2.87%. It's being supported by the 9-day exponential moving average. But given that the MACD is moving towards the signal line and momentum is below average and pointed downwards, I am thinking that today we are going to fall below the 9-day exponential moving average, and Bluebird might probably lose another 20 cents today before close. Allogene is down minus 2.67%, and we are firmly below our resistance of 9.93, and right now we are at 9.65. MACD is bullish, but it's tending towards the signal line. Momentum is above average, but it's pointing towards moving below average. So given that, I'm thinking that Allogene is going to close the day probably at minus 0.50. Editas is down minus 2.16%, and our support of 18.20, which is this horizontal green line, is going to be tested today very severely. And I think that we might potentially fall below that support line and end up with the support of the 9-day exponential moving average, which is sitting at 17.78. So that's a good possibility to happen today. Teladoc is down minus 2.42%. 9-day and 20-day exponential moving average are giving it a support. But the MACD is bullish, but still moving towards the signal line in a bearish manner. And momentum, though above average, is pointing downwards and ready to cross over to below average. Given that, I think that Teladoc might end the day minus 2.25 before close. ARCG is down minus 2.77%, and in sympathy with Teladoc, it's likely to go down further and maybe end the day minus $2. And it's currently getting support from the 9-day and 20-day exponential moving average, which is a very, very strong support. But I'm afraid we are going to break down below that and test the support of 44.39, which is this horizontal green line. And we are likely to break down below that also. And by the end of the day, 44.39 will be converted into a resistance. So that's my prediction for ARCG. CRISPR is down minus 3.66%. And we have fallen below the bullish channel that we had, and that's a big breach for us, and we are likely to fall down further today because our MACD is turning towards the signal line and it's ready to breach it towards the bearish side. Momentum, which was above average, is now crossing over to the below average side. So all put together, I think CRISPR is going to go down, and it may end up the day probably minus $3.5 before close of day, and our horizontal support line is now going to become a resistance. Intelia is down minus 4.51%. That's around $3.25, and we have fallen below our bearish channel support line, and that support line is now going to become a resistance. That is this diagonal red line, and we have fallen below our 9-day and 20-day exponential moving averages. Our MACD is turning bearish. Even though it is bullish right now, it's moving towards the signal line in a bearish manner. Momentum below average and continuing to falling down is indicating to me that Intelia is going to lose another $1 before the close of the day. DNA is down minus 6.05%, and I'm afraid that given the momentum pointing downwards and being below average, it's going to push the MACD towards the bearish side. And going forward, I think it's going to very, very severely test the 9-day exponential moving average, which sits at 3.35, and I think before the end of the day we're going to fall below 3.35, and the 9-day exponential moving average is going to be a resistance for us. Verve is down minus 5.07%, and we had a steady growth which was happening in the last few days. Each of these candle is a 1-day candle, so if I was to connect all the lows for the days, this would have been our support line. And I'm going to keep it green for now. But I'm afraid that by the end of the day today, there is a good chance that we might potentially breach this support line, because the momentum, which is below average, is tending towards going further down. And that's going to influence the MACD, which is struggling to turn towards the signal line and cross over in a bullish manner. So I'm thinking that we'll be fortunate if we can maintain the support of this line and not breach it. But in all probability, before the end of the day, we would have breached this support line. So that's my prediction for Verve. PSEB is down minus 5.69%. The MACD is bearish and the momentum is also falling further. So I'm thinking that PSEB may probably end the day minus 0.75 to minus 0.8 cents. So it may lose around 80 cents or 75 cents before the end of the day and close minus 6%. That's the best case scenario I can think for PSEB. That brings me to a close of my session today. And I think that if the market starts to feel jittery about the weekend about the Russia-Ukraine crisis, that may kind of offset the positive news that we got in terms of the agreement between US and EU for supply of gas and replacing the Russian dependence on oil. That positive news halo might be overshot by that. And the second thing that could happen is that the Treasury secretaries might be looking at ways in which they can curb other countries from buying oil and going over the sanctions and helping Russia to sell oil. And it's also possible that in order to entice other countries to buy oil from Russia, Russia might be pricing its oil and gas at a very cheap price and accepting Bitcoin and gold, which is what is probably pushing the price of gold and Bitcoin up. And if the Treasury secretaries of various countries and the finance departments find ways of blocking this leakage, then oil is likely to continue on its march up again, or else we have a very benign oil situation going forward. So that brings me to the end of a very mixed day. And my personal prediction, despite all this contradiction, is that I'm thinking that people are going to take profits before end of the day because they don't want to be they don't want to end the weekend holding the baby while anything could go wrong on Saturday and Sunday. So that's what I think. And if they if the market does fall today, then Monday might be a much sharper rise if nothing bad happened during the weekend. So that's about it from me for today. Please like this video so that other people can get to see it. And I hope you have gained something of value in here. And if you're here visiting for the first time, please subscribe to this channel and help us grow. You'll find everything about CRISPR out here. And that's about it from me for today. Bye and have a great day. And I might see you by the end of the day today, because I'm thinking of coming out with a end of week market status video. So if I manage to do that, you'll see another video today. Thanks and have a great day. Bye for now.